Your neighbor casually tells you he's got about $2 million saved for retirement. You congratulate him. 2 million sounds like success, comfortable, upper class. Then another neighbor mentions she's sitting on 3 million. She drives a Lexus. She takes trips to Italy. At that point, your brain quietly labels them as people who've already made it. They feel like the 1%. And that feeling is where the illusion begins. Because as impressive as those numbers sound, they're not even close to the top. Not close to what actually buys long-term financial safety in America. What's dangerous isn't admiring those numbers. It's assuming they represent the finish line. Once that assumption settles in, most people mentally stop climbing. They think the stress is over, the math will work itself out, and the system has finally rewarded them. In reality, that sense of arrival is often the moment people lock themselves into the wrong level of wealth without realizing it. In this video, I'm going to show you what retirement wealth really looks like in America, where most people actually land, and why so many end up stuck in a place that feels successful, looks successful, but quietly limits their future. There's a specific point where most people think they've won, and that's exactly where the trap closes. Most people don't misunderstand retirement because they're careless or irresponsible. They misunderstand it because the entire conversation around money is built on vague words instead of hard numbers. We're told to aim for enough, to be comfortable, to be doing fine compared to others. None of those words mean anything when it comes to long-term financial survival. They feel reassuring, but they're not measurable. And when something isn't measurable, it's easy for the brain to fill in the gaps with optimism. If the bills are paid and life feels stable, we assume the future will somehow take care of itself. That's how people end up confusing lifestyle with security. A nice house, a decent portfolio, a sense that you're better off than your peers starts to feel like proof that the plan is working. But retirement doesn't care how you feel about your money. It only cares about math, time, and risk. And the uncomfortable truth is that most people are judging their progress using the wrong scoreboard. They compare themselves to friends, neighbors, coworkers, not to the actual structure of wealth in America. So they think they're climbing when in reality they're just moving sideways on the same floor. To understand why this keeps happening, you need a better mental model, one that shows you exactly where you are and how far the climb really goes. The easiest way to understand retirement wealth is to stop thinking about it like a number and start thinking about it like a building, a tall one. Every floor represents a different level of net worth, and most people spend their entire lives moving from floor to floor without ever seeing the full structure. Early on, the climb feels meaningful. Each step up brings better furniture, nicer views, and a sense that you're making progress. And that's where the design gets clever. Every few floors are intentionally made to feel like a destination. The lighting improves. The neighbors look successful. Life feels easier. So your brain sends the signal that says, maybe this is enough. Maybe this is the floor you were aiming for all along. What most people don't realize is that this building wasn't designed to help you reach the top. It was designed to keep you comfortable right where you are. And sometimes, even worse, it nudges you to borrow money to make your current floor look nicer, instead of saving to go higher. You take on debt to decorate the illusion of progress. Without a clear map of how tall the building really is, it's almost impossible to know whether you're halfway up or still near the bottom. And when you don't know that, every decision feels reasonable in the moment, even if it quietly locks you into the wrong floor for decades. To see how this plays out in real life, we need to start at the bottom and work our way up. When you start at the bottom of the building, the numbers get uncomfortable very quickly. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the bottom 25% of American households at retirement have a total net worth of around $70,000 or less. And that number isn't just cash. It includes everything. Home equity, retirement accounts, savings, all of it combined. This is the floor where retirement stops being a lifestyle choice and starts being a survival strategy. Most people here aren't retired in the way we imagine it. They're living primarily on Social Security, sometimes picking up part-time work, sometimes relying on family, often cutting expenses down to the bare minimum. The system doesn't frame this as a failure. It gives it a clean, neutral label, the bottom quartile. That language matters because it makes the situation sound normal, almost expected. And in a way, it is expected. This is what happens when decades of work, modest saving, and rising costs collide. Nothing catastrophic has to go wrong for someone to end up here. No bad investments, no reckless spending. Just ordinary life, played out inside a system that steadily erodes purchasing power over time. The bottom floors aren't full of people who did everything wrong. They're full of people who did what they were told and assumed it would be enough. And that's what makes the rest of the building so dangerous. Because as you move up from here, the illusion of safety appears long before true security ever does. As you move up from the bottom, the building starts to feel safer. This is where most people land, the middle floors, the place economists politely call the median. According to the data, if you retire with somewhere around $400,000 in total net worth, you are exactly in the middle of American retirees. Half have less, half have more. On paper, that sounds fine. Better than fine, actually. It sounds like proof that the system worked. But this is where the illusion becomes dangerous, because the math doesn't match the feeling. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the median retired household in the US spends roughly $60,000 a year. Do the calculation. Even if Social Security covers part of that, $400,000 doesn't stretch very far over 20 or 30 years, especially once inflation and healthcare enter the picture. This is the floor where life feels stable, but the foundation is already cracked. People here don't feel poor. They don't feel desperate. They feel responsible. They paid off some debt. They saved consistently. They did what they were supposed to do. And that sense of responsibility becomes a psychological shield. It stops them from asking harder questions. They compare themselves to the bottom floors and feel relieved, not realizing that comfort and security are not the same thing. Being above average in a system designed to underfund retirement doesn't mean you're safe. It just means you're not the first to fall. This is also the floor where surprises start to matter. Inflation isn't abstract anymore. Medical costs aren't hypothetical. A few bad years in the market don't feel like noise, they feel personal. And yet, from the inside, this still looks like success. That's why so many people stop climbing here, convinced they've reached solid ground, unaware that the real risk hasn't even shown itself yet. Let me make this concrete, because this is where the numbers stop feeling abstract. I know a guy we'll call Dave. Dave worked as a regional manager for a logistics company for about 30 years. Solid career, steady income. He saved when he could, put around 10% into his 401. Nothing reckless, nothing flashy. By the time he retired at 65, Dave had roughly $380,000 invested. He also owned his home outright, worth maybe $200,000 in a mid-tier market. All in, his net worth was close to $580,000. Dave thought he was doing fine. And statistically, he was. He was better off than most of his peers. His plan was simple: combine Social Security with portfolio withdrawals and live on about $50,000 a year. Reasonable on paper. The problem was that paper didn't include inflation. It didn't include rising insurance premiums. And it definitely didn't include a medical surprise in year 3. A surgery his insurance mostly covered, but the out-of-pocket bill still came in at $18,000. That single event permanently changed the math. Suddenly, the safe withdrawal rate wasn't safe anymore. By year 7, Dave was back working part-time at a Home Depot. Not because he wanted something to do, but because the numbers no longer added soup. From the outside, Dave looked like a responsible, middle-class retiree. From the inside, he was constantly recalculating, constantly adjusting, constantly aware that one more bad year could tip everything over. This is what the middle floors really mean. Not comfort, but vulnerability that hides behind respectability. If you keep climbing, you eventually reach the floor that feels different. This is the upper middle tier, roughly the 75th percentile of retirees. Net worth around $1.2 million. A paid-off house worth $400,000. A portfolio that can reasonably Throw off $40,000 to $50,000 a year. Add Social Security, and suddenly you're living on $75,000 annually. You travel, you help your kids or grandkids. You don't stress about groceries or gas. From the inside, it feels like you've won. This is the most convincing illusion in the entire building. Because nothing feels tight anymore, people stop questioning the structure itself. They stop running worst-case scenarios. They stop asking what happens if markets stall for a decade or healthcare costs spike faster than inflation. And the system explicitly rewards that pause. Advisors reassure you. Friends admire you. Your lifestyle finally matches the story you were told growing up about what success looks like. But this floor is not the top. It just has better lighting. You're wealthier than most retirees, yes, but you're still exposed to time and randomness in a way people rarely talk about. A long bear market, a major medical event, helping family longer than expected. Any one of those can quietly turn comfort into constraint. The danger here isn't recklessness, it's confidence. Confidence that the climb is over, that the math is settled, that you've arrived somewhere permanent. This is the floor where people stop climbing, not because they can't go higher, but because they don't see a reason to. And that's exactly why so many never realize how much building is still above them. Once you pass that upper middle floor, the numbers start to feel almost unreal. To be in the top 10% of retirees in the United States, you need roughly $2.9 million in total net worth. Let that sit for a moment. Not the top 1%, not the elite, just the top 10. At this level, you're wealthier than 90% of people your age. You look down and you can't even see the ground anymore. And that's where the scale problem kicks in. The human brain is terrible at understanding big numbers. We think linearly. We assume 3 million is just a nicer version of 1 million. But wealth doesn't scale that way. The distance between 1 million and 3 million feels large emotionally. But structurally, you're still playing the same game. You still care about market cycles. You still pay attention to withdrawal rates. You still notice inflation. You're comfortable, very comfortable, but you're not insulated. And this is where a lot of people quietly mislabel themselves as rich. At a retirement party, someone mentions they've got 3 million saved. Everyone nods with respect. Internally, it feels like a victory. But in the context of the building, you're only on floor 29. High up, impressive, but nowhere near the top. The danger of this floor is subtle. You've climbed far enough that stopping feels rational. Pushing higher feels unnecessary, even greedy. And yet, the real shift in how money behaves hasn't happened yet. You're still inside the system, still reacting to it, not benefiting from it. To understand where that shift actually occurs, you have to look at the very top, not as a goal, but as a reference point. To reach the top 1% of retirees in the United States, the number jumps to around $21.7 million in net worth. That's not a slightly higher floor. That's a different building. This is where the way money behaves fundamentally changes. People at this level aren't just comfortable. They're detached from financial stress entirely. They don't think in terms of budgets or safe withdrawal rates. They don't flinch at market volatility. Healthcare costs don't create anxiety. Travel decisions don't require math. The most striking thing about this level isn't spending, it's calm. I've spent time around people with portfolios in this range, and what stands out is how little attention money demands from them. Their money makes more money in a single year than most people earn in a lifetime. This isn't aspirational, and it's not meant to be. It's explanatory. Because the purpose of looking at the top 1% isn't to tell you where you should aim, it's to show you where the game flips. Below this level, you're navigating the system. Above it, you benefit from the system. And that difference has nothing to do with willpower or intelligence. It comes down to ownership, leverage, and compounding at a scale most people never reach through saving alone. This is where the common assumption breaks. People think the gap between 3 million and 20 million is just more discipline, more years, more patience. It's not. It's a different set of incentives entirely, which raises the uncomfortable question most people avoid. If income alone doesn't get you there, and saving alone doesn't get you there, then how do some people cross that gap while others never do? The answer sits in the structure they build long before retirement ever begins. This is where everything comes together, because by now the pattern should be clear. The gap between the middle floors and the top of the building isn't willpower, and it isn't intelligence. It's incentives. Income decides how comfortably you live today, but incentives decide where you end up decades from now. Two people can earn very different salaries and still land on completely different floors, depending on how the system around them pushes their behavior. I've seen people earn $400,000 a year for 20 years and retire with less than $2 million. I've also seen people earn barely over $100,000, live modestly, invest consistently, and retire with 8 or 10 million. The difference wasn't talent. It was what their environment rewarded. American consumer culture is built to absorb every raise you get. A nicer car, a bigger house, a better zip code. Each upgrade feels earned, justified, even responsible, and none of it compounds. The system is perfectly happy if you climb from floor 5 to floor 12 and then stop. In fact, it prefers that. You feel successful. You keep consuming. You stop questioning whether the building itself is tall enough to protect you. That's where most people quietly stop. Not because they failed, but because they were never given a reason to keep climbing. The solution isn't extreme. It isn't dramatic. It's mechanical. Automate your savings so the decision disappears. Live slightly below what feels reasonable. Drive cars longer than feels socially comfortable. Make investing boring on purpose, because boring is what compounds. The goal isn't to reach the penthouse. The goal is to avoid getting stuck on a floor that only feels safe. Most people will never see floor 200, and that's fine. What matters is understanding where you are, what the structure is doing to you, and whether your incentives are quietly pulling you toward comfort instead of security. The building isn't the enemy. The floor you stop on is